Welcome to this module about migration and health. My name is Jenny Malmsten. I have a PhD in International Migration and Ethnic Relations, and I am the head of a unit called Center of Excellence Migration and Health in the Regional Council of Skåne. And I will present to you an introduction to migration. Please join me. This lecture is about migration, and I will introduce a brief historic perspective on migration, but mostly talk about reasons for migrating and migration today. The aim is to give you an understanding of the basic mechanisms of migration and what migration in the world looks like today. Further on in this module, we will talk about how migration can affect health and what aspects can be relevant to consider when meeting a migrant patient. You will first be given some exercises during this lecture, and secondly, you'll be given an assignment where you will be asked to find out more about migration in the country you live in or the country where you practice as a physiotherapist. The data presented in this lecture is gathered from the UNHCR, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and from IOM, International Organization for Migration. These are reliable sources that you can use when looking for information about migration in the world. When talking about migration, it is important to be aware that migration can take place for many different reasons. Generally speaking, migration means movement from one place to another. To migrate is to move. It could be from one city to another or across borders to another country. In this lecture, when talking about migration, I mean international migration. That is, movement over country borders. In any case, migration involves action of some sort, a decision to relocate. Take some seconds to reflect over what reasons you can think of for people to migrate. There are, of course, many reasons for migrating, and some reasons can be to work in other countries as manual workers, highly qualified workers, or as entrepreneurs. Other reasons can be to study in another country. Some people migrate because they feel forced to move, so they become refugees. Others migrate in order to live with family in other countries as family members to previous migrants. These are just some reasons for migrating. Maybe you thought of other reasons. And maybe you think of migration as a part of modern way of life in a world where a plane ride can take you almost anywhere in about 24 hours. In fact, migration is not a new phenomenon, and movements has always been a part of history since the earliest of times. However, international migration in the scale that we see now has grown in volume and significance since after World War II. In a historic perspective, classical countries of migration are, for example, the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Argentina. Their population is mainly of European descent. But migration changes over time. For example, in the 20th century, after 1945 until the 1970s, Northern and Western Europe was affected by labor migration. Sweden, that is my home country, was once a country of emigration. My grandfather's brother emigrated along with 1.5 million Swedes to the United States in the late 19th century, early 20th century. Today, Sweden is a country of immigration. This is one example of how migration pattern changes, and over history we can see many examples of this. It is important to remember that migration affects both the country of origin and the receiving country. Sometimes it also affects countries of transit. Often the lack of opportunities to create a life for yourself in the country of origin is the reason for migrating. The lack of opportunities could be the result of unemployment and financial insecurity, but it could also be the result of living in a country with political instability, brutality, war, or other types of conflicts. In the receiving country, migration does not only affect the migrants themselves, but also the receiving society as a whole, where international migration contributes to population change. Many migration processes start out as a temporary migration. A person or a family decides to go to another country for a couple of years to work or to study and then return to the country of origin. But after a few years, they might have met a partner in the receiving country, or the children might be rooted in school, and so they decide to stay, and the migration becomes permanent. Here is a quick overlook from the IOM's World Report, showing the share of migrants in different countries around the world. As you can see, some countries have almost no migrants, while others have a large percentage of migrants. As mentioned earlier, migration flows changes over time. Take some seconds to reflect. Which countries do you think has the largest number of migrants living abroad? Today, India has the largest number of migrants living abroad, 17.5 million, followed by Mexico and China, 11.8 million and 10.7 million. The top destination country is the United States, where a little over 50 million international migrants reside. So what does international global migration look like today? According to a recent report from IOM, International Organization for Migration, the number of international migrants globally in 2019 are 272 million people. That is about 3.5% of the world's population. So even if it's a large number, it may be good to reflect upon the fact that 96.5% of people living in the world are not migrants. Most migrants were men, about 52%, and 48% were female. 74% of all international migrants were of working ages, that is 20 to 64 years old. Earlier on, we talked about migration as a process of moving from one place to another, a process that involves action. A migrant, however, is a person described as someone who moves for different reasons depending on the context. While migrants often undertake some form of migration, it is actually not always so. In some cases, people who have never migrated may be referred to as migrants. For instance, children of people born overseas are often referred to as second or third generation migrants, even though they themselves have never migrated. Migration can be the result of a voluntary decision, but it can also be the result of, for instance, war, persecution, or famine. In the latter cases, migrants are called refugees. Let's take a look at a short clip from UNHCR in which they explain the differences between migrants and refugees.
The words migrant and refugee do not have the same meaning, and confusing them can lead to big misunderstandings. So who are migrants and who are refugees? Refugees are forced to move to another country because of armed conflict or persecution. Migrants leave their country for other reasons. They may go to improve their lives, to get an education, to join friends and relatives, or for other reasons. Here are some examples of people who are migrants. A young woman whose only chance to study was to go to another country. A man who joins the love of his life in another country. A young man who legally works in another country. Migrants may not face immediate danger if they return to the country they have left behind, but they often have very good reasons to leave. Many people migrate because of poverty, food shortages, or because they face other challenges, like natural disasters or environmental problems. Moving to another country gives some people the chance to improve their lives or to better provide for their families. While they face similar challenges, such as navigating new cultures, languages, and processes, The legal situation of refugees and migrants is different. International law gives refugees the right to seek safety in another country. They cannot be sent back if they face danger in the country they left behind. That rule usually does not apply to migrants. Countries deal with migrants under their own immigration laws and processes. Refugees and migrants do share one fundamental thing. They are all human, and they all have human rights. Regardless of their origins or the reasons they moved to another country, they must be treated with respect and dignity.
UNHCR estimates that nearly 80 million people are forcibly displaced worldwide in 2019. Out of these, an estimated 30 to 34 million were children below 18 years of age, and 26 million people were refugees. As you might have noticed, there are many different concepts to describe migrants, such as international migrants, forcibly displaced persons, refugees, and asylum seekers. Let's have a look at a clip from UNHCR, where they explain more about what it means to be a refugee.
Refugees can come from anywhere in the world. They are people of all walks of life fleeing conflict and persecution. More than half of the world's refugees are from Syria, Afghanistan, Somalia, and South Sudan, because these countries have been affected by civil war and conflict for many years. The number of people who have had to flee their homes because of war or persecution is higher now than at any other point since the Second World War. New conflicts have been erupting, and some old conflicts are yet to be solved. This is preventing people from returning home. Durable solutions for refugees, like integration in a country of asylum or resettlement to another country, don't always exist. And so, many refugees remain refugees for a very long time. On average, people are refugees for nearly 2 decades. The lives of refugees are often on hold. Many have no idea when they will be able to return home. Fortunately, many show a lot of strength and resilience and continue to build their lives despite the hardship they face.
Often when talking about refugees, we assume that refugees are people who come from third world countries to Western countries. In reality, most refugees are internally displaced persons. This means people who are refugees in their own country. The number of internally displaced persons due to violence and conflict were, according to the UNHCR, 45.7 million people in 2019. The Syrian Arab Republic had the highest number of people displaced, 6.5 million, followed by Colombia, 5.6 million, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, 5.5 million. Another group that we sometimes forget when talking about international migration are stateless persons. In 2019, globally, an estimated 4.2 million people were stateless, according to the UNHCR. Côte d'Ivoire had the largest number of stateless persons, around 1 million people, followed by Bangladesh, 850,000 people, and Myanmar, 600,000 people. The point of this presentation is not for you to remember exactly how many people are either internally displaced persons or stateless persons. It is to broaden your understanding of what migration is, and also to challenge the image of which countries in the world receive migrants. Later on, you will be given an assignment where you will be asked to find out more about migration statistics in the country where you live or practice as a physiotherapist. When doing so, don't forget to compare the amount of migrants in your own country with the number of internally displaced persons in countries like the Syrian Arab Republic, Colombia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Migration is about movement. In this presentation, we have talked about international migration. Migration flows changes over time, and countries can go from being a country of emigration to immigration or vice versa. You have learned more about different ways to categorize migrants as refugees, internally displaced persons, asylum seekers, and so on. To find out more, you can look at statistics from UNHCR or IOM, the International Organization for Migration. But most importantly, this last slide of this part of the lecture is perhaps the most important one. You have been given some basic facts about migration, and soon you will find out more about the country where you live or practice as a physiotherapist. But when meeting a migrant patient, you must always remember that migration might be a factor to take into account when treating a migrant patient, but it is not always the case. Every person is affected individually by migrant experiences, and you will learn more about this when listening to my colleagues Mia and Angela. Good luck with your upcoming assignment. If you have any queries, don't hesitate to contact me at jenny.malmsten@skane.se. Thank you very much for listening.